Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? Welcome to another edition of the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. My name is TJ Jones. Thanks for checking out the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Well, Who Dat Nation, it is Q&A time. That's right. It is question and answer time on State of the Saints podcast, where I take questions from listeners of the show. Now, you know how it is. It's the off season, so there's very little news coming out of Saints camp. So I still want to keep this show going, and I think that it's only right that I interact with people that make this show what it is. I want to say thank you to everyone that submitted a question. Thank you very much for those that listen to the podcast, no doubt. But before we get started with the Q&A, there is some news. The preseason power ranking for the National Football League came out, and the New Orleans Saints were ranked number one. That's right. The black and gold are ranked number one. Now, you can take this for what it is. It's just a preseason ranking. I will agree with it because I do believe that last year the New Orleans Saints was the best team in football. I think that they were probably the most complete team when it comes to offense, defense, and special teams. So I think that them being number one, I think that was their right place. I'm not being biased. If the Saints were not that good and they were number 3 or number 4, heck, number 10 or 15, I will let you know. But I really feel like the New Orleans Saints should be the number one ranked team. I mean, they had the best record in the National Football League. A lot of people will say, well, the Los Angeles Rams had the same record as the Saints, but the Saints did beat them in the regular season. And you can make arguments to say that the Saints could have possibly beat them in an NFC Championship game. And a lot of people feel, like myself, and probably somebody listening to this podcast, that the New Orleans Saints should have been in the Super Bowl. So they should be number one. But once again, this is just the preseason. This is just a preseason poll. I mean, that was last season. The Saints are coming into the 2019 season. Might be a completely different team. Hopefully we see the same type of team we seen in 2018, but much better. But only time will tell. But ESPN has reported on their preseason power ranking that the New Orleans Saints are the number one team in the NFL. But let's go ahead and get started with these questions. Thank you very much for submitting once again. But without further ado, let's get into it. The first question comes from Sean Phillips. Sean asks, how do the Saints stack up against their rivals in the NFC South so far? Well, I only assume that he's talking about, I guess, some of the acquisitions that were made in the offseason, because if we were just looking at last year, you would say that the Saints were the best team in the division because they won the division. The Saints were the NFC South champions, and they were a clear-cut favorite to win it all. So you have to say that they were the best team, not only in the division, but the National Football League, just like the preseason ranking says. But if we're talking about this year, that remains to be seen. Now, I would think that the Saints will pick up where they left off. They will go out there and they will really put in that work. I mean, I know a lot of people are upset in the Who Dat Nation. They're upset because Mark Ingram left and he went to Baltimore. I mean, that is the tough reality of the National Football League. It is a business. I know we scream from the rooftop. We say, who that, man? We love our Saints players, but at the end of the day, it's about business, man. And Mark Ingram, he has to look out for himself. He has to look out for his family. And the New Orleans Saints organization have to look out for the organization. So I know we're going to miss him, but I'm really excited to see what Alvin Kamara can do. And I think we all saw that. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. I think that's one of the reasons why the Saints probably didn't do as much as they possibly can to keep Mark Ingram in New Orleans. I think they could have did more. I know there were some news stories going around that said that Mark Ingram's representation wasn't interacting with the Saints organization. But in my opinion, if the Saints really, truly wanted him there and they really wanted him to stay, they probably would have badgered him until he signed. But I think those games, week 1 through 4, when Mark Ingram wasn't playing, he was suspended for 4 games, and Alvin Kamara was the every down back. We saw that he can carry the load, and he did a good job. I mean, we know what he did. Y'all remember when they were playing against the New York Giants, and the Saints had the ball, and they were in their 2-minute drill, And then we seen Alvin Kamara just bust loose for that 73-yard touchdown. He ran through the tunnel and dipped out on him, which is still funny, man. One of the most funniest, I think, funniest things I've seen in NFL last season. But Alvin Kamara, he the truth, man. And now you have Latavius Murray coming in. You have him coming in from Minnesota. This guy is a proven commodity, and I feel like he can contribute similarly to Mark Ingram. And then you have Jared Cook, the tight end position has been filled. I think the Saints have made some good moves, some really, really good moves. And I feel like they really plugged in some players that can contribute in a big way. Now, are they the best team in NFC South? I'm going to say yes until the whistle blows and it's week 1. Okay, because last year they were the champs. But this year, I mean, everybody is trying to win the Super Bowl. I mean, just think about it, man. Even the Detroit Lions have the same opportunity at a Super Bowl title than the New England Patriots right now. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying, man, no way. But everybody's record is 0-0 right now. So until the Saints go out there and they compete in the 2019 season, yes, they do have the leg up on the competition in the NFC South. But thank you, Sean, for your question. The second question comes from Travis Johnson. Travis asks, how do you feel about this year's schedule as far as teams? Also, should we go after another cornerback in the draft or rely on the guys we have? Well, thank you, Travis, for your question. The first part of your question, how do I feel about the Saints schedule? I think that the Saints have a very tough schedule. I mean, it's a first-place schedule. So anytime that you're playing a first-place schedule is always tough. And the Saints are playing against teams that are pretty good, man. They're playing teams that are in the NFC West and the AFC South. In the NFC West, you got the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers. And then you got the AFC South. You got the Texans, the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Titans. I mean, so when you look at all of that, you know it's going to be tough. But I think that the New Orleans Saints are going to be game. And then they got to play the Dallas Cowboys this season. That ought to be pretty good. I mean, I think that the New Orleans Saints got what it takes. The Saints were lucky last season because they didn't suffer any significant injuries, man. At the beginning of the season, of course, you lost Patrick Robinson, you know, guys like that. But at the end of the day, the Saints were pretty healthy throughout the season, man. These guys went out there and they handled up on their business. So hopefully they can repeat what they did. But it's not going to be easy because teams are going to be looking to knock off the Saints, man. I know the Saints weren't the Super Bowl champions, but the Saints aren't a secret anymore. I mean, we used to yell from the rooftops that the media wasn't paying any attention to the Saints. Nobody was giving the Saints any type of attention. Well, they got the attention, man. Between them being 13-3 and that controversial call in NFC Championship, the New Orleans Saints not sneaking up on nobody. And the second part of your question about the cornerback, no, I don't think the Saints need to get another cornerback. Now, I know for years the Saints have had issues in the secondary, but I think that the Saints are going to be better in the secondary, man. These guys now have 3 years of experience playing with one another. I'm talking about Marcus Williams, Von Bell, Marshawn Lattimore. I mean, these guys right here, Eli Apple, he's going into his second year with the team. These guys have chemistry now. I don't think that you're going to see some of the issues that you've seen that plagued the Saints because back in the day, Sean Payton would get tired of players and then he'll kick them out the door and then another guy come up there and he gets smoked like brisket. Look, I don't think that you're going to see these type of problems with the New Orleans Saints. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that the New Orleans Saints need to get a cornerback in the draft. The next question comes from Wayne Bradley. Do you believe that the Saints need to trade up to get the first round pick? Man, Wayne, look, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there is no way that the Saints are going to trade up to get the first round pick, man. Now, I'm going to talk about this because you asked me, Wayne, so I'm gonna do it, man, for you, bruh. But no, man, it's not going to happen, man. And honestly, even if the Saints had the opportunity to do it, I wouldn't do it. I mean, this draft right here, man, it don't seem like they got those those players that will set your team up 10, 15 years down the line. Now, if this was like the 83 draft when you had Jim Kelly, Dan Marino, and John Elway in there as quarterbacks, by all means, man, move heaven and earth. But not this year, man. I mean, you have some very okay players. I mean, guys that probably going to get into the system and they'll probably contribute. But I don't see a guy that you're going to see us talking about down the line being on a Mount Rushmore quarterbacks or being on a Mount Rushmore of defensive players. I just don't see it, man. This is a very lame draft, man. I'm not excited about it at all. It's one of those drafts that you just hope that the Saints actually pick some decent players and we just move forward, man. I'm very comfortable with the Saints have on their roster already. Now, they can always get some young players, man. And Jeff Ireland, who is the assistant general manager of the New Orleans Saints, has done an outstanding job finding these guys, man. So, I mean, for the last couple of years, the New Orleans Saints have had some decent players. I mean, we can talk about Marcus Davenport. I mean, I know he's been injured, but when he's been in, man, he's shown flashes. Traquan Smith, I think we're going to see a much better version of this young man coming in. I think that during the season, man, you go through growing pains. I mean, it's a long season for a rookie when you're used to playing like 10, 11 games, and then you just transition playing 16 games in a season. I know it can take its toll on you. So the Saints have a second-round pick. They don't have a first-round pick because of Marcus Davenport. They traded with the Green Bay Packers to move up so they can get Marcus Davenport. I think that they need to go out here and really make this second-round pick worth it. But no, to answer your question, I don't think they need to move up to get the first pick in the draft because I don't think there's a player that's worth that. I really don't. And the last question, this comes from Mike Wrinkle. Mike asks, what's our biggest need on defense and offense? Well, that's pretty easy to me. The biggest need of the New Orleans Saints, in my opinion, is at the defensive end position. I mean, I know we got Marcus Davenport and we got Trey Hendrickson, but you can get some guys in the draft that are some decent pass rushers. I think that the Saints need to go out here and get themselves a pass rush, a guy that can actually come in. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys who is like every down, but the Saints have something called a NASCAR package. That's what that full-on blitz, a guy that can come in and they can get off the edge real fast and probably get that tackle to get the defense off the field on third down. I think the Saints need to go that route, and maybe that player can transition to be a good player. I think that they need to focus on the linebacker position as well. As we see in the National Football League, there's a trend of that hybrid linebacker, a guy who can be in coverage, and also a guy that can put his hand on the ground and go after the quarterback. I think that the Saints need to go out there and get players like that. I mean, when you look at players like Lathan Vander Esch, Luke Kuechly, like guys like that, you know, that can go out there and cover that running back and also be a sure tackler. I think the Saints need to focus on that. I think if they focus on getting a pass rush and a sideline linebacker, I think that the New Orleans Saints will be okay. But I want to thank you for submitting your questions. This has been another edition of the State of the Saints podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com, search the State of the Saints podcast. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Also, previous episodes are available on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio.com. Till next time, all I have to say is, who dat?